concern, like I said, is that we requested a site visit for these two permits that we're going to talk about today. And it's been, at this point, let's say 85 days. And I was wondering what is the point of having a hearing like this unless we've had a site visit?
Well, okay, we sent you a letter.
Okay.
You got that letter saying that we can't give you, the state of Tennessee cannot authorize a site visit. Okay. Now, the site visit, you could request a site visit through OSM, through the Office of Service.
So it's got to be through them?
It's got to be through them.
We're not the landowners, and we can't give you both legal access,
Okay.
or there's also safety, mine regulations for safety for
Correct.
personnel that come into play that we don't have any control over.
Okay.
So you could either go to the Hood Cole and OSM and say, we would like a site visit to look at this, and they have no obligation, as far as I know, to give you one if they don't want to.
No.
It's up to them.
So that, okay.
OSM, under certain rules, if their permit was being renewed,
Right.
then you could get a site visit. But just a request of a site visit because the NPDES permit's been renewed is not a valid
We've got
reason.
one already.
Okay.
Yeah,
I guess.
it's gonna, I don't want it to sound like you're trying to keep it from.
No. I'm just saying
You're
you want
one
to.
safety.
That's what I'm saying.
And under MSHA rules of safety, if non-sanctioned personnel are on the mine site, the company can get written up for safety violations.
That's correct.
Okay.
So I don't know I think they have to send you some sort of minor training, and you have to be escorted, you have to have.
Yeah, there's always kind of.
Yeah.
Well, and it's their discretion, like Goff was saying, whether to allow you on where to take you. I mean, they will not take you to an active area. But these aren't active areas anyway. Like, these are all reclaimed. Okay, so what's your,
So, all right, well.
well, let me preface this. I mean, for what you're saying right now, we in a letter said that we would meet with your group and to discuss these things, that you don't have to have a public hearing to meet with us. We will meet with you to discuss the issues surrounding the permit, the site, anything, water quality wise, okay? And you don't have to request a public hearing. Now, these sites are gonna have permits, okay? There's gonna be a decision to issue these permits. That's what could be, our notice of determination will be to issue these permits, okay? Because they still have to have a permit until final bond release, okay? So, in the future, rather than taking up our time like this, it would be better spent for you and your group to meet with us one-on-one, where Jonathan, me, Gary, or whoever, and we can go over the data, we can go over the site, as far as that goes, okay?
Well, this is, the reason why we request hearings is less for an informational standpoint, and I didn't realize we could just meet with you.
Sure.
Casually. That'll still take the time though.
Well, when you request a meeting, like we sent those letters to,
Right.
okay? And in that letter, I know, I wrote it, so I know we said we would meet with you.
Right.
And all you needed to do was pick up the phone or send an email, and we would arrange the
Great,
meeting.
thank you.
Yeah, I see. Okay.
Okay.
Well, I know that's out there. We'll try to take it.
Okay.
But the reason why we have hearings though is for public participation standpoint. We're partially a public participation organization, so.
I understand.
Yeah, so it's not just for us, it's for kind of the general public. We just need to do a better job of getting people out on hearings.
Yeah, well,
So,
that's fine. I mean, whether you're public and the gentleman back there is public, the rest of us are.
can we still record like a casual meeting? Would
Well, as far as a casual meeting, we're gonna, when we meet with you, we're gonna be telling you, exactly, we live and die by the regulations.
Right.
That's what we do. That's it, bottom line. There's no deviation from that. We are authorized under the regulations to regulate a certain way, and we do. And that's how we do it. Whether you're meeting casually or formally, the answers will be the same.
Chris, is there any rule or anything that applies to if somebody comes in just to ask for a sit-down meeting with us and they want to record that? Are there any rules that apply to something like that? It's not anything that I'm aware of.
Well, I would think that if you all don't have a problem with someone recording.
Yeah, it would just be a consensual
Yeah,
thing, right?
yeah. But I can double check with general counsel.
Yeah,
I think just in front,
we
informal.
occasionally have somebody that it's okay.
I mean, if you guys are okay with someone taping the meeting, I think as long as both parties agree to tape, it shouldn't be a problem.
I don't see it as a problem. We're not gonna
You're
say
not gonna change your
anything.
mind.
Right, we're not gonna say anything that would be misconstrued anyway.
Yeah, where it gets squirrely is if like the people come to one meet with it, they've got their lawyers with them. And he says, I want to record.
No, we can't do
And
that.
then you say, you can, but if you're gonna do that, I have to have my lawyer
Right,
there too,
right.
so he can tell me when to shut up and when not to.
I don't really foresee a
Yeah.
time when we will.
Yeah.
Maybe if we get like a huge grant. No, I don't say that.
Well, see, if Stephanie comes, then, we have to have a lawyer. We can't just meet informally.
Oh, really?
No.
Was it a lower present last time?
Well, that's not strictly true, but if there's an action that she's taken
Okay,
against us on
gotcha.
that one,
That makes
then
sense.
We're
it
working
becomes
on it. Right.
a case or whatever you want to call
Gotcha,
it.
gotcha.
so.
We can't just,
But yes, she could come in casually just to talk about something that we're not in contention over yet.
there's not any litigation on it.
Gotcha.
We don't mind, just our lawyers will flay us alive.
No, yeah, that's just bad.
Okay, so what else?
Yeah, so I guess that's good to know. Yeah, I guess I'm still confused about, so NPDES, permit renewals.
Yeah.
It seems like, so you have like your NPDES process, you have your SMACR process, which
Correct.
is OSM, right? And so, I don't understand, so NPDES deals with like the point discharges from the sediment lines usually, correct?
That's correct.
And there's some stuff like groundwater monitoring points sometimes on permits.
The groundwater is informational only,
Okay.
okay? Surface water monitoring points, which we include in the NPDES, are informational because what we do, we use those surface water points for numeric water quality standards in the receiving water bodies.
Yes, okay.
The effluent is from the discharges from the outfalls are the only things that the NPDES really regulate.
Okay.
The Water Quality Act regulates the stream. And that's both the numeric and narrative water quality standards.
I just don't understand like why OSM would site visits, like a mechanism for requesting site visits, and before like the permit came up for comment or the comment period ended in the NPDES wouldn't do that. I mean, is there like, because we could just limit it to just access the NPDES at certain points, because we do testing, we like testing.
You can't, what Jonathan just said, and I'll read you it.
About the site visits and things?
Absolutely.
Yeah, right.
It's not about our regulations, it's about trespassing and not trespassing. It's not our property.
Right.
We have authorization to enter properties that we permit by law.
Okay.
Right.
As the Commissioner of Environment's representatives, you have the legal right to enter this and take a sample, things like that. It's in the rule. If you go onto their property, that's between you and them. I don't understand how OSM's thing works. I don't know anything about
OSC
that. I assume
in their
there's some,
act, they
yeah,
have,
there's something in the SMACR Act that provides for this, but I don't.
but I think it's only in renewals. It's in renewals or new permits.
Gotcha.
I mean, it's not just any time that you feel like going on to the site. It's got to be, there has got
It's
to
when
be,
it's up for review.
right. If there's a significant revision, which is basically like a new permit, or a new permit action or renewal, then at that point in time, for OSM, for the OSM permit only. And we're trying to get on, basically a same timeline with OSM, but it's difficult to do, okay?
Okay. Thanks, that clears up a lot, because I was just like, what is going on? Like, am I missing something big, or? So you're looking at the disregard, like, the first third of my documents that we need to. The other thing, since once we start, there's no question answer once the hearing starts, right?
Correct.
Okay, all right.
Right, while the record's open, we just go, thank you for your comment. But afterward, if something occurs to you, you can ask us.
Gotcha. I'll try to be brief. I'm gonna draw this out. Just like 2 more things. So on the 17th of September, we submitted comments. So both of these for renewals. Based on the comments that we made and the issues that we raised, is there any way to determine if staff from TDEC has been out to verify that the violations that we pointed out are still there, or if anything's been done about it, or any site visits at all based on what we do now?
We haven't reviewed, first of all, we haven't conducted site visits at HearingRegarding, nor have we conducted site visits at the Tackett one. We have previously conducted site visits at both of these. OSM has conducted site visits at these. They do monthly inspections of those. We use that information as far as our basis of whether or not we need to spend our time and energy to go out to validate anything. And OSM inspectors will request that we come to the site to evaluate the water quality and the effect of the water quality of the receiving stream.
So, and I don't think we copied in on the violations we found. So the proper thing to do is, if we find violations, give them to OSM.
No, first of both of us.
Yes.
They'll actually go out and look for them. So they're responsible basically for.
Or we both will.
We both will.
They might be going there tomorrow anyway, is what he's saying.
Okay.
They have a mandate to be on that site once a month. We don't.
Minimum.
Okay.
What we've got is, well, OSM staff is like 45 people. You're looking at the cold staff for NPDES, because there's 3 other people.
So would y'all like to get out there, or is it just a staff problem?
We can get out there when we need to get out there, but we cannot, like, say, every 2 weeks, we're gonna go to one of these sites. It's not physically possible with this staff. This staff is the reviewers, the permit writers, the enforcers, the inspector. It's the whole program is Dave, Dan, Michael, and Mike.
And that's for the whole
Yeah,
state.
that's the whole thing for the whole
That's
state.
incredible.
So there's some limitations in time.
Okay. So if because we spend a lot of time and effort going out. I mean, obviously it's not like our full-time work or anything, but if we go out and find like a bunch of damage, ideally we would notify y'all and y'all would go out and check it, right?
Absolutely.
But in the way it works in Tennessee right now is that since y'all don't have, I guess, the funding and staff for it, we tell OSM, they make the call.
No, Dave's got you going in circles here. If you send us something that alleges water quality violations, and especially if you show us data that doesn't agree with the last data that we have on the site,
Okay.
yes, someone's gonna go look.
Right.
Are they gonna go look tomorrow morning? That may be different.
Is there like a time span, like a 30-day?
Well, anytime you have a complaint, you got 30 days to go.
Okay.
Now,
But it
some
has
of the
to-
things y'all turned in before, when we looked at it, you had the spot where the sample was collected marked with an aerial and a GPS point.
Right.
Some of them, these points were not the discharge points. This is water that hadn't made it to the treatment plant yet.
Okay.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Some of them where the seeps come out of the fill and they go over the gravel road or the dirt road.
Right.
That water is on its way to the treatment ponds. And it hasn't got there yet. So that's not effluent water. That's not water to the state. It's not a discharge yet. It hasn't been treated yet. That's like saying the sewage treatment plant's out of compliance by sampling the sewage that hasn't got into it yet. So those are things we disregard. But anything that you put in there is saying, look, we were at the outfall point and we measured this. We'd like you to go check it out. Yeah, that's going to generate, well, we need to go look at that and at least get our own sample and see if we can confirm that or not.
Okay.
That makes sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. So, on piggybacking on that, so we submitted our permit comments on the 17th of September. And what you just told me would be really valuable to know, because that would save us effort, it'd save you effort, and duplication of effort and all that. And
There's a little bit of discrepancy between what's a comment saying, we think this site sucks, and what's a complaint.
Gotcha.
I don't mean to get it lost in semantics. I don't mean that at all. It's just that we found this. We think it's something you guys need to go look at. It needs to be marked in that manner.
Okay.
put in clearly in terms so there's no confusion.
Right, and I think, you know, that when you see the commenting and with the CDs and all this other stuff, you know, okay, that's one thing. I mean, you can, all you would need to do is send an email. And send an email with that information, and then that would be enough. You don't have to, you know, go to extremes as far as the documentation. I mean, obviously, if you've got field data or lab data, and you want to attach the lab data and the field data to that email, then you've got Jonathan's email, you've got my email, that's all you need. You don't have to, you know, make a big formal deal out of it. It has the same weight as putting, you know, these really elaborate, you know, data mine things with your Google Maps and all this other stuff. You know, if you've got a latitude and longitude, if you've got a GPS and you've got a latitude and longitude, that would help us. Those are things that we do, you know. If you see things, I mean, if you're out and about and you see things just like we see things, I mean, we're going to try. Our goal is to correct these conditions, have through enforcement of the laws and the regulations, if it's available to us. Not all things that you see out there can be enforced on. If it's a forestry activity, then those things are not going to be enforced on, unless it's a point source. And even then, it's very difficult in Tennessee.
All right, I guess all the questions I have for you.
Okay. It's 20 after, so I guess we can go ahead and do this. You've done this before.
Yeah.
Mr. Howard, have you ever been to one of these before?
Good to see you.
Yeah, in September.
Okay.
But I'm just here as an interested member of the public.
Sure. What we usually do on these things is we've got a room full of people, and some of them want to speak and some of them don't. And we have an official statement there that I've given you that gets read into the record, then we open the recorder, and then we take anybody's comments.
Right.
In this case, there's two people here, and it looks like one of them wants to speak.
Okay.
So what we thought we would do different today is turn on the recorder, and I'm just going to open the thing by putting a few facts that identify where we are and what we're here to talk about
Right.
into the record, and say the record's open, and then let James make whatever comment he wants to.
Right.
You can decide to speak if you want to. You don't have to. And then after we close it, if you have any questions, we'll hang around and answer your questions informally, all that you want to. Okay? Well, I don't see that we need to do the whole formal thing if it's just us here. So. And if you got the camera where you want it, we can just set the recorder right in front of you. You don't have to get up and go in.
Yeah, I got pointed at me, so we got my best angle. I'm gonna go ahead and pass this out for y'all. That's a good time for you.
Oh, Christmas present.
I made 4 duplicates, so I don't know.
Christmas present?
I don't need
I don't know who all needs one.
Those guys.
We can make copies, I guess.
Okay.
Just make sure that we
One of them's
get.
good for us.
That's all we really need.
Yeah. Working.
All right, are we all in here, Gary?
Yes. Red light.
Okay.
Just like on the wall. This just came out this way. Oh.
Okay, we can begin the hearing process at this time. This is Tuesday, December the 10th, 2013. It's 6:20 p.m. Eastern Time in the Knoxville Environmental Field Office of TDEC. We're here to cover 2 separate public hearings to consider comments regarding applications for renewal of NPDES permits. The first permit is HearingRegarding Coal Corporation, Hoodtown Surface Mine, NPDES permit number TN0079545 in Fentress County. The second permit is Copper Glow Fuel Inc., TN0079430, Tackett Creek Surface Mine 1. Campbell and Claiborne County. The first person who wanted to speak is James Kane of United Mountain Defense.
Present?
Since we have two different permits here, if you have a comment that applies to one permit and not to the other, please preface your comment by saying this applies to HearingRegarding or this applies to Tackett CreekSurface Mine, so that it can be distinguished. But if your comment applies equally to both, then it'll be understood. Thank you.
That's good. All right, I'll keep this brief. So there was some conversation earlier regarding answering requests for site inspections that was cleared up. So I'll just dive right into the rest of it. And y'all are gonna have to refer back to, because the actual documents I gave you in light of what we talked about, I would refer to some of what I wrote, or just leave it all together. So do I need to go into that?
As you please.
Okay. So it's come to our attention that OSM collects the data on these sites. TDEC does not have staff that actually goes out and reviews the water quality measures. They reflect OSM data that takes care of that concern. A couple main things. We've noticed a lot of road stream crossings. And according to 33 U.S. Code 1362, Section 12, the term discharge of a pollutant and the term discharge of pollutants each means an addition of any pollutant to navigable waters from any point source. Both of these permit sites, renewal sites, contain multiple stream and low water crossings, each of which is an unpermitted point source discharge and a violation of applicable regulations, including key sections of the Clean Water Act. And one of the TDEC staff spoke, and we determined that some of the low water crossings are in the treatment train. Is that correct? And so the water that would cross the road at a specific point would not necessarily be a point source if that water was then to go downstream into a sediment pond.
Right.
So that was brought to my attention. However, without the photos in front of me, I have to go back and review how many low water crossings actually would meet those criteria and would not be of concern. Maybe a few. Thinking back. But at Tackett Creek, there were 11 unpermitted stream crossing points discharging the navigable waters identified on the permit. There are corresponding images in the attachments that we have given the TDEC staff on a disc. HearingRegarding site had one unpermitted stream crossing point. Both of these sites were viewed overhead imagery found on Google Earth. The imagery was current as of April of this year, so we do not foresee that those images will be widely different from that time to this. And so if those discharges are found at a later date, it is a almost near certainty or a certainty that those discharges will have been continuously discharging unpermitted pollution into navigable waterways in the United States. We also found some unpermitted point source sediment pollution. There were multiple discernible, confined, and discrete conveyances constituting unpermitted discharges, which have been contaminated by contact with overburden, raw material, intermediate products, finished product, byproduct, or waste products existing on these sites. The Tackett CreekSurface Mine, we were able to identify 2 unpermitted, discernible, confined, discrete conveyances constituting unpermitted discharges to navigable waters identified on this permit. Again, there are corresponding images in the attachments on the disc and the digital media that I gave the TDEC officials. At the HearingRegarding surface mine site, we actually found 14 of these unpermitted point source sediment pollution violations. At the HearingRegarding site specifically, there were, as we term them, downstream impacts from point source discharges. Were at the end of the sediment pond treatment train, there was an outlet, a final outlet pipe, which I believe would constitute the NPDES discharge for these points. There were 8 of them, and judging by high-resolution satellite photographs, again, imagery that is back to April of this year, 2013. It was clearly evident that the discharges coming from the end of the sediment pond pipes, the NPDES locations, were causing extreme bank incision and contributing point source sediment to various tributaries, including Lintz Cove Creek in the case of HearingRegarding. Also at the HearingRegarding site, we were able to identify unpermitted vehicle fluid discharges. It appeared to be vehicle either motor oil or hydraulic fluid. That was across one section of the site. Again, we have the images in the corresponding attachments folder on the digital media that we've given the TDEC. This site, apart from the obvious fluid discharges from vehicles that were stored there, also included some derelict equipment, including tires and what looked like a metal chassis of some kind of mining equipment. The last thing I want to bring up is that at the Tackett CreekSurface mine, on August 31st of this year, we went to latitude 36.50845, longitude -83, 941617, and we found a unpermitted discharge across the road with a conductivity in excess of 2,317, pH of 7.51, iron content of 82 micrograms per liter, magnesium or manganese content of 22,000 micrograms per liter, and sulfate content of 1,460 milligrams per liter. We documented that and sent it to the regulatory authorities. So obviously, in light of these facts, as well as the violations of copper glow in particular, we move and we would ask the regulators not to approve these permit renewals. That's all I have.
Mr. Howard, would you like to make a comment?
No.
Okay. If there are no more commenters, that closes the record. Now, I guess you want to talk about now. Normally we don't answer,
Okay.
but I'll answer you this much.
Okay.
Given the disc and the things that you're saying about the site, our response is going to be, we'll go inspect the site and we're going to take samples from all the
Okay.
check ourselves, and we'll go there with OSM.
Okay.
So but I don't have to wait to schedule that until we see the official response. You can
Okay.
take it now, so.
All right. Thank you
Yes,
so much.
certainly it will get looked at. The water you're talking about, those high numbers,
It's probably
those are those places that haven't gone to
Right.
treatment yet, so we don't know what's going to come out the other end.
Okay.
So what we'll go is we'll go to the official outfall point, answer the pipe. Now, what happens on all these coal sites, almost all of them, is that they discharge, as you probably know, to intermittent headwater things that don't flow all the time.
Right.
And because of that, the in-stream water quality criteria number for a given pollutant becomes the permit limit. If we're discharging straight to New River, then the dilution of the river would get accounted into. In other words, you can discharge up to this much iron as long as it won't raise New River above this.
Right.
So, but when these little intermittent tributaries, the water quality standard becomes the permit limit. So when we go straight to that outfall pipe, we'll take a sample. Is it above the permit limit or not? We'll see. Be interesting to see the difference between the numbers you got above it.
Right.
What comes out.
Absolutely. Yeah. We were just.
Because those are high numbers, obviously.
Yeah. But yeah, obviously it's part of the treatment train. Then we totally understand.
Yeah.
Is that on the disc?
It is. Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, I actually have the comments we made, and then I think it was a response, but it's all included in there. But if you have any problems, just email us.
Will do.
We'll get back to you.
Will do.
Is there anything we can answer for you or tell you about while we're here? You get personal service, so.
Yeah.
This is nice.
No, I'm interested in all of this from kind of an academic standpoint. So, but I guess one thing I don't quite understand. I mean, I understand the analogy of sampling from a sewer pipe and then sampling from the effluent from the sewer treatment plant, and how that applies in a case like this. But I'm kind of surprised that. I mean, I thought this would all be standard operating procedure by now, and it seems like there's a little misunderstanding about it. about that. I mean,
No, I
with
don't-
James and,
I think there is a misunderstanding as far as James is concerned, but see, we
It's
regulate.
very, it's very difficult for the public who, this is all private property, they don't have access to it.
Yeah.
You go down to your sewage treatment plant.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
This place, to figure out where the actual official outfall point is, it's difficult to do unless you have somebody out there showing you. You've got GPS points for them, but they're accurate to plus or minus what?
Like 30 feet.
Yeah, so it's not perfect. So without a tour and someone identified, I think it's difficult for someone to come in cold and drive to the, I don't know how many outfalls there are on this one.
Well, I think there's 8 on.
Yeah, drive to all, you know exactly where all 8 of them are, things like that. So the opportunity for confusion is
yeah,
high.
yeah.
Yeah.
But what counts is what comes out of the retention pond.
Yeah,
Right.
it's what gets discharged to your waters.
Right.
The water he's talking
Right.
about is processed water. It
Right.
hasn't been treated yet. So.
Right, I understand.
It's either mine wastewater,
And
on these it's mine wastewater.
Yeah, the limits on the
Right.
permit are placed on the effluent that exits the system before it goes into the waters of the state.
And there's some standard way of building these retention ponds so that you can be sure
Yeah.
they're doing the job?
Yeah,
Yes. They have to be certified by a professional engineer.
Oh, okay.
that's all part of the review and the plans.
Okay, okay. Well, this is interesting.
Now, what we got right now, these 2 permits are good examples of this. We have a lot of permits that still exist on sites that aren't mining any coal. All the coal mining was done years ago.
Yeah,
They're still doing the reclamation, they still have treatment, and they still have to meet water quality standards, so they still have a permit from us, but it's not a coal mine anymore. So, out of all the coal permits we have, I think there's only 5 sites right now in Tennessee that are actually coal mines that are pulling coal out of the ground.
these
The
are
rest of
older,
it's-
old mines that are still leaking.
They're-
stuff. Well, how long does your oversight continue in a case like that? I mean, how many,
Until all the
years and
reclamation,
years?
until all the reclamation is finished, until all their bond by OSM is cleared and they release the bonds. And when the water quality come out of these spots meets water quality standards at that time.
That's right.
Then we can let it go at that point. Sometimes it's many years after when the coal mining's over.
Sometimes never.
Yeah, some of these that were done back in pre-permit and pre-law times and made a mess that we would never permit now are putting out such bad water for decades that there'll be treatment systems there for a long time. We would never permit something like that now from lessons learned.
I mean, these would be like strip mines from the 50s. like
Area
50s,
mines
60s.
too, yeah.
Not so much from the 50s, it's really gonna be more the 80s. When they went in, they
70s and 80s.
They were doing the cast blasting on the area mines, and they didn't really understand fully the geochemical reactions that were, and where the acid was being formed and how it was being formed.
Right.
Uh,
All the coal and all the strata that get disturbed are not equal.
Yeah, right.
And so what you find is there's some that we can't disturb without making a mess that you can't treat and you can't fix in the short term. And some you can, and those that can't, we know now. And if nobody tries to disturb them anymore. The difference between an area mine and a strip mine is in the mountains up here at this high elevation, you have a cut taken out of the mountain to access the seam of coal.
Right.
And when you're done with the reclamation, you put the contour back and redirect the surface water back over it again. And you can do that and you keep the water out of this material. In an area mine, let's say you're down further south where you don't have these mountains and you got a flat plateau top. And the coal was laying down here like this, see? There's no slope to work with,
Yeah.
so you have to go down from the top. And so all this was removed to get to the coal. And they scooped the coal up and then piled it back in there. Put the contour back. But you can't drain water off of it because there's no slope. So all the water that falls on this goes down through this stuff until you hit the mine floor that you left behind.
Right.
And all this material left behind is saturated, and we can't keep the water out of it. And so it hits the mine floor and goes this way, and it carries the acid and the metals and stuff with it toward the nearest stream. This is hard to fix. And if this is a particularly hot material, it's almost impossible. So we would never permit something like this now.
Yeah, interesting. What happens if you can't track down the the operator from 20 or 30 years before.
We got 'em.
In these cases, we do.
We got 'em.
If not, you've got an abandoned mine land site, and there are funds from OSM for a different program to clean up abandoned sites
No.
where you don't have enough.
What we have in Tennessee is unique to Tennessee. Is Office of Surface Mine, they have a alternative bonding system. On sites like Gotham just erased, which is like the area mines. What OSM and TDEC, we worked together on this. And we set a permit up, and it's based upon the amount of money it would take to treat the water for, and then they extrapolate that out to 70 years. Then the company puts up this fund in an annuity. And that annuity is then reviewed each year as far as, and the treatment cost and different things that have to go on at that site. We have 5 of these here in Tennessee. And there'll be a few more, not many more, but there'll be a few more.
We're not creating any new ones. We're dealing with the old
No,
ones.
these are all old sites that we have been dealing with. They've been in litigation. Some of these sites are the most litigated mines in the United States. Hundreds of, well, I won't say hundreds of millions, but I'd say hundreds of thousands of dollars anyway in litigation cost and fines and different things that have gone on. These are the companies are still, these companies, they buy and sell this stuff, and what they have is these companies they have assets and liabilities. That's a liability, okay? They have assets that maybe are coal reserves in West Virginia, coal reserves in the Midwest that provide them, so to get the assets, you gotta buy these liabilities.
So one company buys a section of coal in Wyoming that's valuable. Yeah, we'll sell it to you, but you gotta take the liability site with it that we're still treating in Tennessee, and so it changes hands and they have to keep treating it. So they
Right.
set up a trust. What he's talking about is a trust site. And what you aim for long term is you reestablish the contour, you take as much of the hot material as possible and sequester it away from water and air. You divert as much surface water away from it as possible to limit how much water can conceivably ever sink into this stuff. Try to put soil and stuff on top of it. And eventually, if you can reestablish the drainage patterns, form enough soil and get a forest growing back on it, it'll behave like normal land again. And whatever falls on it will go shallow and go into streams and not sink down into this hot material anymore. A lot of it reacts and it has a reaction lifetime. It can't react forever. There's only so much sulfate in it, things like that. So some of it goes away in time. But some of these have gotten better. They're starting to look much better, and some of them have not yet. So.
How big are these in acres?
Thousands.
Yeah.
Thousands
I was going
of
to say
acres.
hundreds, but there's some of them that are more than that.
We have probably down south in Sequatchie and Van Buren counties, probably somewhere close to 6,000 acres like this, maybe more. But they're controllable as long as there's certain things you can do, okay? There's certain things you can do, but there are certain things that no matter, even if you spend tons of money on these sites, and they're spending tons of money, millions and millions of dollars cleaning these places up, you still don't meet water quality standards. Because even if you clean it all up, you've got a condition that is not representative of the streams that were there. And as far as how we judge the sites that's cleaned up, it's got to meet water quality standards, numeric and narrative water quality standards. That's what we're saying. When it's cleaned up, it's got to meet both of those water quality standards that are required under our regulation.
What's a narrative water quality standard?
Biological integrity is a narrative water quality
Yeah,
standard.
a numeric standard is selenium in surface waters can never be higher than this.
Yeah,
Narrative is an extra part of the rules that say, in addition to all these numeric things, you also can't put anything in the water that's harmful to fish and aquatic life and human health, a catch-all kind of thing. So the narrative is based on ecological harm or
Right.
human health harm.
right.
So it's not enough to say it meets all the numerical standards that we have. You also have to be able to say, and it meets the biological standards that stream ought to have.
Okay.
Because we don't have a numerical standard for every conceivable thing that could ever happen.
Okay.
Because of that, below all these mines and discharges in the receiving streams, we have biological monitoring points checking the health of the stream, in addition to checking the outfalls for do you meet your number or not.
Right.
So you say, do you meet your number or not? Then you say, and is it working?
Yeah, it's indicator species, that,
Parallel lines, checks and balances, things
yeah,
like that.
right.
And the standard for biology is based on reference streams
Mhm.
in each ecoregion.
Places where there's been no mining at all, so natural, yeah.
Least disturbed, still available, right?
There may have been mining that didn't disturb or damage the ecosystem. It's hard to find systems in Tennessee that have no disturbance.
In these ecoregions, yeah.
Well, you can find places like Frozen Head.
Right,
that
one,
have been
that
protected.
stream is one of the reference
I
streams.
was-
But there's
Places like
mining
that.
in that stream.
That's
In
right.
Flat Fork, there's mining, there's surface mining in Flat Fork.
There's a history, but once you get inside the park and start going up that mountain slope,
Yeah.
you've got as undisturbed as you're gonna get in there. That's, the mining was downstream of that, so yeah. Yeah, that's a good example of a reference stream. We have an advantage over some other states. Can you imagine some states trying to find reference streams for their ecoregion in the year 2000 or in the 1990s? What if you're New Jersey, where's your reference?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So some of them were stuck with best available that we can still find.
Mhm.
So, and that skews the results. Have you ever seen one of the reports that says the most polluted water quality states listed from 1 through 50? There's some group that puts this out every year. What they do is they go to our 303D list of impaired streams, and then they say which state has the most miles listed and things like that. Well, it doesn't really tell a very good story. If you're a state that does a lot of monitoring and accurately identifies the problems you have and puts it on the list, you're going to come up looking polluted. And a stream that doesn't sample a state that doesn't sample any of their streams or has different standards to you comes up looking pretty good. So New Jersey is the reason I pick on them. They're always up near the top of the cleanest water streams. That can't be right. Ohio is always high on the list, but Ohio couldn't find any reference streams in the present day that weren't farmland or urban. So what were their streams? The best farmland streams they could still find. So that became the bar for biological use support, and it's easy to meet it. Tennessee's fortunate in that we can still find really high quality streams in most of our ecoregions, with which we set that bar that's near pre-development standards. So we have a good bar for these streams, and when we meet it, we're doing a good thing. The exception is a few of the places in West Tennessee where all the ag is and the soil's so rich, hard to find good reference streams to send them out there.
And the
That's more like
channelization too, you know, that core, you know, the Army Corps of Engineers, you know, back in the 60s, you know, they thought straight streams were good streams, the straighter the better.
And a reference stream has got to be a similar underlying geology, I guess. I mean,
Yeah.
for the Cumberlands, you couldn't go to
Right.
the Smokies.
No, you
Yeah,
can't, and
reference
the
to that.
ecoregions are identified by exactly what you said.
Okay.
Geology and forest type.
Right.
And so the Blue Ridge alone has 6 or 7 different ecological subregions. There's
Right.
just Blue Ridge. Then the Ridge and Valley has 6 or 7, and then the Cumberland Mountains are separate from the Cumberland Plateau and so forth and so on. They're pretty
There's
specific.
3 in the
And we have to
Cumberland.
have reference streams for each one of those subregions that you can't extrapolate. And Tennessee's worse than most. Tops of the Smokies, Boreal Forest, Mississippi floodplain, and everything in between. The water quality differences are enormous.
Is there a list of reference streams on the website somewhere? Who keeps track of that?
We do. You can look
On their
on the
TDEC
website.
website?
Look for. I think it's attached to the water quality standards. Is there a separate document? That's all it is.
Separate.
It's in the ecoregion reference.
It would be a publication.
Yeah, it's a TDEC public. Go to TDEC Water Resources Publications on the website, and scroll down through the publications, and you'll find the one you're after.
Okay.
And then if you have any trouble finding it at all, call me and I'll get on the computer at the same time and we'll walk through it together until we find it. Without it in front of me, I'm having trouble.
It's such a
posting it around.
user-friendly website.
That's better.